Interesting. Oh, hi everyone. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Welcome to our panel celebrating Jackie Ormes. My name is Christine Pisola Norland. I am the founder of a young grassroots arts and culture organization called Hello Barcada, which can also be pronounced Hello Barcada. And I'd like to thank Regine Sawyer and Women in Comics Collective International for allowing us to host this panel on their platforms. Joining me today is this esteemed panel of cartoonists who are each history makers themselves. I believe, so what's with this? To my to my left, or to your right, is Ms. Barbara Brandon Croft, whose comic Where I'm Coming From was first published in 1989 and then became syndicated in 1991 and ran until 2005. In becoming syndicated in the mainstream press, she became the first Black woman cartoonist to be international syndicated in mainstream press altogether. So welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Next, we have Bianca Eunice, who is an Ignatz Award winner and a part of the comics collaborative Six Chicks. With publishing Six Chicks, they've become the first non-binary cartoonist to be syndicated in the mainstream press. So welcome, Bianca.
Yay.
Hi.
And we also have Steens, who is a Dwayne McDuffie Award-winning cartoonist, who, when they took over the Heart of the City, which publishes out of St. Louis, became the second non-binary cartoonist to be syndicated in the mainstream press. So thanks for joining us, Steens.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yay. So just really quick before we begin, if you don't already know about Jackie Ormes or you didn't Google her before today, just to remind everyone that Jackie Ormes was a cartoonist who published during the 1930s to the 1950s in the Black-owned press, specifically in the Pittsburgh Courier and in the Chicago Defender. And she's regarded as the most prolific cartoonist that was a woman of color at the time. So we're going to spend this next hour fanning about her and her work. And so to begin, my first question to everyone is, let's talk about your Jackie Ormes origin story. When did each of you first learn about Jackie Ormes?
Gosh, I think for me it was maybe like 10, 15 years ago. What year is it? Hold on.
Right?
So, 2021. So yeah, actually I think about 10 years ago when I started working in the comics industry and really doing more research into who else was out there. And before I even considered going into comics professionally. I started working at my local comic book store, and I was just eating everything up. And Jackie Ormes was one of the people that I learned about. And when I found out about her, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's it. Because I was thinking like, well, who else can I really look to for other creators who have been doing this much longer than I've been alive. And so I wanted to go through the history, and the history is rather short, but a history nonetheless. So I think that was when it first came to pass in my head, is as a little baby in a comic book store.
Barbara or Bianca?
So I found out about her in 1988. So sorry, guys. I think I'm the old one here. But it was, but I found out about her in 1988. And my dad was also a cartoonist, and he was a part of and one of the pioneer Black cartoonists at that. And really, I've always been very interested in history. He was always interested in history, and it's so important to see things in context. Just to understand, where we're coming from, so to speak. But there was an article about her in a magazine that my dad had, and I was like, wow. And I had actually started a strip. I had actually created Where I'm Coming From for a magazine that folded, so it never got printed in 81 or 82. So I was really interested in knowing that there was a Black woman who was out there already and doing stuff and incredible stuff. So I was just amazed at her work, and that's I felt like I could stand on her shoulder. I mean, we're all standing on her shoulders. She put down the foundation, and I felt connected in some kind of way. In many ways, I felt connected just knowing her life and what she produced. Yeah, Bianca.
Barbara.
I think for me, I don't really remember the first time, like the first connection to her, especially because she has such a strong presence in Chicago. And with her presence being like part of one of the founding members of the DeSable Museum here, which is for those who are unfamiliar, the DeSable Museum is like one of the first Black centric museums based out of Chicago. So there's like art, there's history, it's a little bit of everything. And we go there for field trips in elementary school, high school, and so forth. So like her name and her presence was something that was part of the history of Chicago for me. But for it to sort of switch from kind of like just this historic figure to like this personal figure was probably more in my 20s, when it kind of became like, oh wait, this person that was kind of just like this auntie figure in my mind, like, so she was actually like really cool, and she like made comics, and like this is incredible. And it kind of made me then sort of, instead of just being talked about to myself as a child, it made me sort of seek her out myself and learn about her work, and her humor. She has such a smart and just snappy sense of humor in her work. Even now, if I would just go through and read one of her comics, I'm just like, man, like this was spicy for the time. Like I like, it's shocking. Sometimes they're shocking. Like when I think about just the way that she just kind of went straight to the point in her work, and she just had that one sentence in a lot of her comics. Yeah, it's just it's incredible. But that's Black women for you. Like, we're gonna just tell you the truth, and I love that.
We are the givers of the real talk.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like, let's staying here and then talking about her work. So Bianca, you're kind of touching on this, like what struck you about her work. Was there any, when you think about that and her voice in it, which really comes through and is very socially aware. Mm-hmm. Do you picture a specific panel or a specific work when like as an example that pops in your mind when you think of how that voice came to you to strike you like that?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, was the paper dolls that she did were like huge, because I have such like an interest and respect for fashion, and to see those paper dolls and like the variety of kinds of styles that she put her characters in, and I was like, this is great. This is what I really, really love to see. So yeah, that's actually what I'm working on. I'm looking for some tattoo artists in Chicago who can do pinup, because I want to do one of her torchy togs for a new tattoo. So if you have any suggestions, Bianca,
oh man,
throw my way.
Yeah. For me, it's always been sort of Patty Joe and Ginger, those comics. Even though like they're sisters, I kind of always imagine they always remind me of me and my mom in a way, because like I was raised by a single mother and we would go on our little adventures, and some of the things that the little girl says kind of reminds me of some of the things that I might have gotten a whooping for saying it to my mom. And I actually, speaking of tattoos, I actually want to get a tattoo of her on my arm, because the way she dressed reminds me of some of the outfits my mom used to wear back in the 50s and the 60s when she was a little girl.
Oh my God.
But yeah, there's one in particular. Oh, there's one in particular that I think about a lot that I actually want to get a tattoo of. It's her, and they're both wearing these beautiful 1940s witch costumes. And they're so opulent and they're so goth, and they're like got these corsets on, these beautiful hats, and they're talking about witch hunting. I don't remember the line specifically, but I know that it's talking about sort of people pointing out to be like a communist during the time, and just the commentary on that. And I think about those little one-liner jokes about how she would have just these ordinary situations between these two sisters, and they would be talking about the politics that were happening at the time and adding their voice to the conversation. I often feel the spirit of Jackie encouraging me when I do my one panel comics for Six Chicks and inserting like some regular scenario. Like there's one of me and my partner getting dressed up that I did for last Halloween, and I'm wearing a sheet like a sheet ghost Halloween costume, and my partner is like, maybe you should put on a costume, a sheet that has a pattern on it, so you look like the right type of ghost. But I'm thinking, like, I think of like those types of jokes and like Jackie Ormes sort of humor, that it's just kind of like, that's dark, but I like it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Barbara, I do want to get to, but I want to bring up the line that Bianca, because I was just actually looking at that one last night, and it's the line that accompanies it is, "You'll be glad we came as witches. Wait and see. I understand some Hollywood scouts are simply hunting them these days."
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. It's amazing. So Barbara.
Yes. Well, I was going to talk about Torchy. I was, and when Torchy came back, with I'm going to say the heartbeats, but it's not, because, but it was just so, yeah. The love, I loved how the one I've been looking at recently was and it was really her, she had this, it was really a self portrait, I mean, if you look at Torchy Brown, it looks just like Jackie, and I mean, it's and the feelings that she had, the way she expressed things, she would say, I'm walking towards Paul, my love, you could feel how she was feeling about this guy. But then on top of her trying to get down to the South where he just started, she's like walking she's let off of the train and she's walking through, there's no bus there, and she talks about her green shoes getting dusty. I mean, I could like feel the whole environment. I could just feel the whole thing, and what was going on in that particular stretch was her boyfriend Paul was a doctor, and he was finding these chemicals that were coming into the water, and which is all very timely, and ruining the water for everybody in the community. And he was working at the clinic, and she's like, what's going on here? I'm going to go and tell these Mr. whoever he was, the big muckety muck guy, that you've made this find. And he's like, you can tell him, but I don't know what's going to happen. And she went into this office and stood up to this white guy and was kind of taken aback when the guy didn't want to listen to her. She's like, what? But I could feel it. I mean, I could feel everything that she was doing. And I just loved the way she wrote and just made you feel in the moment with her. And then it was like the rest next week, it's like, it's like her Sunday thing that she did, and so the story continued every once a week. So that's the one that comes to mind for me. She's talking about pollution, she's talking about what are these big companies just not caring about the community, and particularly the Black communities. And she was speaking to that boldly, proudly back then. And yeah, I feel very attached to her, you know. I feel very in sync with what she was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting if someone just jumped in, didn't hear that she published in the 1930s into the 1950s. That everything you just described, Barbara, it could apply to today. And that was in 1953, 1954 when she published that.
Yeah.
So it really is amazing how she still transcends to today. And I think so. And also, again, if you just learned about her, just to give a little bit of a primer too, Torchy Brown was her character that she drew in strips. So she had 2 comic strips that she published, and she debuted with her comic strip. It was called Torchy Brown in Dixie to Harlem, and that one published in 1937, I believe, in the Pittsburgh Courier. And then close to 20 years passed before she brought Torchy back in the Pittsburgh Courier, and that's the one that Barbara is talking about, which is Torchy in Heartbeats. And that one was all color, right?
Yeah, well, I saw it in black and white. It could have been in color. I don't know. Okay. Yeah.
And then what Bianca was referring to, and then the Torchy Togs, those were associated with Torchy in the Heartbeats publications. So then you would have like the comic strip, and then at the end of it was this little paper cutout that you had these free newspaper paper dolls, but of this beautiful figure and all of this awesome styles of like from dresses to bathing suits, things of the season.
Yeah.
Right. And then to what Bianca was speaking to, Patty Jo and Ginger, that was her longest running comic. And that was a single panel cartoon. I can't remember the years specifically, but that one was the one that ran close to, I want to say between 15 and 20 years. And the one that preceded that was Candy, which I feel like, and maybe that's just like the inner, I don't know if you want to call it nerd or geek or hipster, but I'm just like, I want to know more about Candy, because I feel like there's a lot of scholarship and discussion around the Torchies and the Patty Jo and Gingers. But Candy was really also, I mean, that was where she established the speaking directly to the reader voice. And it was where she really had agency, like that character speaking to us, and we're in on the jokes about her employer, was when she first started that voice. And what I recently learned, I think it's in Tim Jackson. Was it in Tim Jackson's? I forget which text that I was reading, but she was not paid for Candy. She was paid as a reporter. So Candy published in the Chicago Defender, but it was for free. She was actually getting paid. She was on contract as a reporter, and then did that on the side. But that's what brought her into doing Patty Jo and Ginger in the Pittsburgh Courier. So
that's such a hustle.
For real, right? Like, she was like, I'll do reporting, but by the way, also, can I draw something? And
it's really interesting you bring that up, because I was reading through some books as well. And one of the interesting things to me is how so many people thought that she took her comic, Patty Jo and also Torchy and Heartbeats to the Courier because she wasn't getting paid for Candy. And then a lot of other people were like, that's not really the case, because she always had money. The thing is that the Courier, even though it wasn't where she was living at that time, it actually had more of a syndication and readership than the Defender. So it's like a really business savvy decision, is that even though you're not actually in that city at that very moment, like if they syndicate all over the nation, like why not? You know? So
Right.
it's like, that's one of my favorite things about her, is not just the multitudes that she has, but also that she really like knew what she wanted to do with her career and how she wanted to do it. And so she did it, you know, and that's definitely how I feel I like to go about things. I don't have a situation of like, I don't know if I can. I don't do that. I'm like, if I want to do it, I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me also is that she was part of the Black press, and that was very different. I mean, it, and to me, it's thank goodness there is a Black press. There was a Black press, because if we were to just understand what it was like, or because what we do, we reflect on what's going on around us. That's what cartoonists do. But if we were only to depend on the mainstream press, the white press, we would think that all Black people in the 30s and 40s were pickaninnies and Sambos and slackers. And, that's how it was just accepted that way. And so here she is, you know, real people, realistic drawings, really wearing clothes, style, grace, all these things that were not something that was known in the country. And if we didn't have what she recorded and drew and showed us, we wouldn't know it that way. Cartoons have a way of just really telling a history, explaining what life was like in during all these times. But Black cartoonists didn't have that opportunity to be free to themselves unless it was in the Black press. I mean, there were many guys that um, did white characters for white newspapers and were able to do, real Black characters for Black papers. And she really, did us a big favor and in letting us know what life was really like. And like you were saying, you could see something in your mom's outfit of this time. It's like it's recorded right there, and it's phenomenal, actually.
Yeah, I jumping off of what Barbara said, I really appreciate that about Jackie's work, because um a lot of times of how Black women and femmes were depicted during that time period, it's like we again were is either a very awful racial stereotype, or was a very like respectable sort of perfect Black female character, but she wasn't necessarily real. She was almost unattainable. Like, I growing up, I was like obsessed with Lena Horne, but also like Lena Horne was like this beautiful model person, that existed on the pedestal, who could sing, the house down and so forth, but I like couldn't be her. I just could like her, and that was it. But with the way that Jackie Ormes like she almost kind of tells on our grandmother a little bit. Like, she like the way like our grandma would be like, "Oh, I just went to church and just kept it, just gave it to God, and I just cooked, and that's all I did." And then we read Jackie's Arms and we see what was really going on when she was young, and she was out there, and she was, being silly and being free and being young. And those stories are just as important. Those stories are pivotal, because then when I read that stuff, I feel two things. I feel less lost myself. I feel less like, gosh, I must be so strange. I must be so weird that I'm like this artsy type of character and I don't necessarily fit into this idea of what a Black person's supposed to be. I see that, but then I also see that none of us are necessarily fit into that box. And she's, portraying these characters that are, again, real and not necessarily what white Hollywood would give us, what made it through, what was kept. It's a real portrayal. It's history. And, I hope that my work can do the same thing, to show a real portrayal of how we are and not how we want to be remembered. Not every millennial person is like this perfect Beyonce character, right? Like, I don't want that to be the only thing that's remembered 40, 50 years from now, is that we all Black women and Black films were Beyonce, and that's it. There are different types of us out here. There's some weirdos, there's some Rihannas, there's some Rico Nasties, there's all types of things. And I love that. And I love that about Jackie's work. And I also love, even though the Defender didn't pay her. They gave her this platform, and I love that about the Defender. And in the same way, like the Chicago Defender helped Bessie Coleman get her flight license by sending her out to France because no one in the United States would teach her how to fly. And so the Chicago Defender is like this weird thing that kind of uplifts Black women in the past. They were definitely opened some doors, RIP to the Defenders, since they stopped going into print back in 2019. But this is definitely one of the first newspapers that I read growing up that I could go pick up on the corner and read on the way home from church.
Yeah, yeah.
So kind of, I guess let's picking up where, like, I think Steens mentioned it first, like the syndication and the distribution. I mean, Bianca, what you're speaking to, the distribution of her work. If for those maybe, I mean, I'm not in this industry. I'm just kind of a nerd fan for it. But there's a difference, right, between the manner in which Jackie Ormes was contracted and how she had her work distributed through the Courier and the Defender versus how each of you all, so Barbara, when you did, and Bianca and Steens as you are now, how your work is distributed through syndicates in the mainstream press. Maybe if you
Right.
if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit, like maybe a syndication 101 for those in the audience who, to give us a foundation of like what the difference was between the two.
So when I came along many moons ago, but I kind of had an idea. I knew how it worked because my dad was with Los Angeles Times Syndicate, and so I had a clue that what these big syndicates did, and that's again when they say big syndicates, they mean mainstream syndicates, they mean white syndicates. But and so like my dad's generation, they started first time being syndicated in the mainstream, Maury Turner and Ted Shearer and my dad. So I knew what a syndicate was. So a syndicate is like a agent, basically. You do the work for this syndicate. The syndicate goes around and tries to sell your work. The newspapers pay the syndicate, and the syndicate pays you. And my deal was a 50-50. And if I got billions of papers, that didn't happen. But if I got billions of papers, my percentage would have been higher. That was in my contract, so I could make more money if that would happen. So what I did was what the syndicates do. I made a press kit of my work, and I sent it to all these syndicates, and got rejected by many of them, including King Features. But Universal Press wanted me, and then King came back. You're never more desirable than when somebody else wants you. It's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we do want you. I was like, I stuck with Universal Press, and I'm happy I did. So little by little, paper by paper, small paper by small paper, it's kept growing and growing. And but there's also an understanding that if they can't maintain a certain number of papers, or they come up with a monetary way of looking at it, if they can't maintain that for a certain amount of time, either one of us can quit each other, so to speak. And they actually kept me on a little bit longer. I was down to a few papers, as they warned us early on that things were changing and people are going to get rid of newspapers, and this isn't going to last forever. So they kind of warned you early on. But so that's my 101. That's how I was able to be part of all this. I'm just so glad to see more women getting into it and being syndicated. It's like it's just a thrill for me because we just all are standing on each other's shoulders. We're all building on, and it's exciting to see. That's
I think
all.
you should go next, Bianca, since you were syndicated next.
Sorry, I couldn't get myself unmuted there. I got my mouse got wet from my water. But my story isn't as interesting of how I got into the syndication game. I kind of fell into it. Honestly, I share my strip with 5 other cartoonists, so it wasn't necessarily something that I had to build from the bottom up. It was something I was grandfathered into, and I'm with King Features, but I also was working with Andrews McNeil before. I got snatched by King Features. I was working on my own strip. It was going to be a personal story, sort of just following this quirky me. So the same thing that I do with all my work. And then we went through some other iterations, and it just wasn't sure if we'd find the audience for it in the newspaper circuit. So I'm kind of grateful that I have Six Chicks as sort of a just a safety net. They've established their readership. People know that the artists are gonna switch out and that there's gonna be different people. Some of the original women are still part of them. We actually, the woman that I replaced, we actually just lost her recently. So it is kind of like that sometimes in the syndication game, that people will work until they are no longer of this mortal plane. And then there's a spot open to draw some comics if anybody wants that spot. But I'm grateful for that, and it's definitely a tribute to just having a community, a comics community. People were thinking about me when this role had opened up. They're like, "Oh, Bianca would be a great person for this," and people knew that I was looking into doing something a little bit more fun, a little bit less sort of on more of my work was kind of becoming very heavy. It was during the Trump years, and every comic that I was putting out was very depressing, and I wanted to kind of step away from some of the Black pain and just Black depression and just things constantly talking about our deaths. And I wanted to just do something a little bit more light, a little bit more fun. And so I'm grateful to be able to do that with Six Chicks for as long as they'll have me, until, I don't know, I get replaced, or I really don't know where it's going to go from here. But it's fun doing it. It's fun being a part of the paper. It's fun making people mad. That's pretty much what I do. Yeah, I get a thrill out of knowing that every Tuesday some white man is very angry.
That's cool. I love that.
So for me, I guess I kind of also fell into it. I'd always grown up reading syndicated comics, so I love syndicated comics. I just imagine my teenage years getting dropped off at Borders during the summer and then just reading through all of Zits. So yeah, that I love me some syndicated comics. But I don't think I ever considered getting into it, for the same reason I never considered getting into any comics, which is it never showed itself as an option. It's very seeing is believing one of the situations where I didn't realize I could also do that until I saw another Black femme doing it, and I was like, wait, hold on now. So the same way I got into single issue comics and graphic novels is the same way I kind of got into syndicated comics. Is like when you see other people do it, you're like, okay, hold on, maybe I could do this too. But 2 years ago, what year is it? So in late 2019, Sheena Wolf reached out to me from Andrews McNeil, and she said that Heart of the City was looking for a new creator behind it, since the original guy who made it wanted to hang up his Heart of the City hat, which makes a lot of sense considering he had been doing it for 20 years daily. So when she reached out to me for it, she was like, what do you think of syndicated? And I was like, tell me more, let's talk. And it was really interesting getting used to the style of syndicated comics, considering I'm so used to having, the world is my oyster with comic book pages, 6x9 blank, go for it. So having this small amount of space, it took a little bit of a learning curve, but because, again, I had grown up reading syndicated comic strips, I know exactly how the cadence of joke telling goes in 4 panels. So I feel like that was an advantage for me that I had been reading those comics for a while. And I auditioned for like 4 excruciating weeks and I eventually got the gig. So I definitely plan on continuing Heart of the City for at least 21 years, so I can beat Mark Tutuli's count. So maybe I'll even go 30 to make it harder for the next person.
Nice. Yes, goals.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's how I get into it. Someone saw that I had the chops artistically, humor wise, and then also because of my background in editorial and event coordination, I'm very, very organized. So I don't end up being the kind of cartoonist that wakes up and is like, what am I doing a gag on today? No, I've actually got May of 2022 done. Like, that's how far ahead I am.
Somebody loves you.
I know. It's because I know myself as a creator. I'm not going to be able to do a current events gag for more than 4 weeks. Eventually, I'm going to get tired of it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for story arc focus rather than individuals, which is much harder to do because you have to reintroduce someone to the story every single strip in a way. So it's a challenge, but a fun challenge because it's like solving a puzzle, So yeah, that was my intro to syndication. Is someone lassoed me in and I stayed.
And I'm just curious, when you say you were auditioning for 4 weeks, is that like a development deal? Is that how they did it?
Yeah, so they basically wanted to do it similar to what they did with Nancy, is, they get someone new on to try and see if they can handle the style of writing as well as getting it in at a certain time, and also making sure that a story lasts for a certain period of time as well. And there's just a lot of stuff that you have to like prove that you can do before they go ahead and put you in a contract, because my editor, she was saying that, once upon a time, those contracts were like 10-year contracts. And so I'm not on a 10-year contract. I'm on a 3-year contract, which I will happily be renewing every 3 years. But, they want to make sure that you know what you're in for when you get into it.
Right.
So,
what's interesting to me is that your developmental deal was like for several months. When I was in it, I had a development deal for a year. So they wanted to see what I could do for a year before.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they pay you a little, sum, but I was already doing it for Detroit Free Press. So I was like, I'll just send you the pencil, and send it to Detroit. I'll send you the pencil and everything will go. But so I'm curious that how things have changed. That's
yeah. They asked for 2 weeks. So 2 weeks of dailies and a Sunday. And so I did that 4 times to show that I could, keep it up. And it was interesting because when I first started, I think I was like mimicking the style that I thought I was supposed to have. And after doing it like the second round, I was like, I feel like I have more wiggle room than I think I do. So that's when I really started to play with my style of joke telling and my style of panel layouts, because even though I've got 2 inches by 6 inches, I'm going to use every bit of it in as many different ways as possible. And it was during that audition stage that I really had the opportunity to really play around with the medium and my, the directions. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And you kind of bringing it all in is the, bringing it back to like with Jackie Ormes as well, is the idea of this pace of having to put a story out or put and you know, in there's the single panels where it holds everything, but to what you're speaking to, scenes from with her Torchy, like having to reintroduce or trust that people had read last week's in order to understand the next week's. The pace of that, and then ultimately what accumulates, right? So there's this breadth of work, which leads me to preservation. Is we all wouldn't have known about Jackie Ormes if on some level there was this effort to preserve her work.
Right.
And so, but even the preservation of her work is lamented, right? Because to a degree, like some of her there's originals of her works survive, but not all of them. There's, even if they were preserved in print, some of them appear on microfiche. And I'm like, I go like this because they are, for those who may not be, I guess I'm gonna say it like library geeks, or as maybe old as maybe me, because I was born in '79. Microfiche were these they're film sheets that you feed into this huge kind of like contraption in the library that you feed it in, and then it magnifies what is on the film. But even some of those of Jackie's works have degraded. So archiving is very important. And sadly, not a lot has been done as far as for her work as it has been for other cartoonists' works before and after her. But some still exist. And so my first part of this question, which is long-winded, is of the works that have survived, or even of the photographs of her that have survived, have you ever imagined a collected work of hers that you wish would be printed?
I would like to see anything. Anything they could put out, I'd like to see. You know, I wish that, you know, more people would be exposed to her work. Whatever you can, you know, whatever's not degraded, whatever. I don't have a specific one, but if we could just keep pushing it out. And what was the book? I mean, somebody did a book of, you know, of a collection of her stuff.
Yeah.
Nancy Bolton. And no, like Steve to do, like, oh, it's all mine. Is all in the living room.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Yes.
Yeah.
But she did a great job. That was wonderful.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I want to see
that book in particular. Just before we move on, is that has like, if you ever were curious about Patty Jo and Ginger, she has 88 reproductions of. And that is still just a modicum of how much she published every day for 50, or yeah, it was a daily for 52 weeks. So for how many years? There's like five. There's like almost 500 of those. But yeah. So Steens, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I want to see a photo book of all the clubs and galas that she went to. Some of the coolest thing that well, there's so many great things about it. But I really loved how she was constantly with, you know, celebrities and socialites because of her connection to her community. And that's the kind of thing that, like, I feel like I am trying to do with my life and my work, is, you know, really building up that community. So not only do I want to see it because I think it's cool, but I saw that there was like a newspaper article where someone was like, and Jackie Ormes was at X, Y, and Z wearing designer gloves. I'm like, I want to see the gloves. I want to see all of her outfits. Because I mean, if all the stuff that I see from Torchy Togs, I'm like, she had a great closet. I know it.
Oh God, right?
I want to see all of her outfits, and I want to see a nice photo book, like a Studio 54 style photography of all the times that she went out clubbing and hanging out with her homies.
That'd be nice.
Yes. I want that book.
I would love to see two things. One, I would love to see maybe like an anthology sort of book where we have contemporary artists contributing to her. Either they use they create their own torchy, or they create their own Patty Joe and Ginger, and it's like this whole maybe there's like essays in it of like what Jackie means to this artist and so forth, and then it has collections of her work, so it's like a little bit of like a scrapbook zine sort of thing, where like a nice size book of that work. Something like that would be really cool, because I feel like it would, you have these modern artists in it, so hopefully it'll pull a new audience than those who are already familiar with her and will just buy like a history book because they're like us, they're nerds for her. But I think also what would be really cool is to see like a really well executed like limited series or film of her, and see, and to actually, because I'm not even sure, outside of like Caroline in the City, there really isn't too many depictions of people who aren't cishet white men in comics, in movies and in television shows. And I would love to see this again, this Black female character who's making comics in the 1940s and isn't like, her whole goal in life isn't to like become a wife and mother. That's like the only depiction that women get to see of themselves in the 40s, is like, I became a mother and a wife, and there's nothing wrong with becoming those things, but I want to see somebody have these ambitions in a time where she was really challenging social norms, social standards, and to see, like Tessa Thompson could probably eat that roll up, and it'd be fine. Like I think that would be but like I don't want white Hollywood to make it. I don't want some like corny, and they put like Kevin Costner in it to be the white savior or something. Like I want like a really good story, like either like a HBO miniseries. Give it some money. To tell the story correctly, not something that's going to get lost on Netflix. Something good. Yeah.
Nice.
I
Yes.
understand there's a children's book, if it's not out already, coming out about Jackie Ormes. I just heard about that recently. I
think it's coming from Scholastic, because I actually did an expert read for that book.
Yeah, they need expert reads. Very good.
So yeah, I mean, so all the more, let's talk about it more. And if there's anyone who's watching, chat with us. Like, you could pick our brains more for some of these projects. Now, that's with regards to Jackie. Now, for each of you, though, you are all, as I mentioned earlier, you're all history makers. So how are you all preserving your work, or making sure your work is being preserved, so that we can continue, so that 30 years from now, when Steens is finished with Heart of the City, and then from then on, we all can still see and admire and go to either museums or find anthologies of your works?
I mean, with Heart of the City, I know it's getting, being put into collections. The first collection comes out next year in May. And so those are going to come out. And I definitely want to make sure that all of those books, a copy of them, get sent to the Library of Congress. And other than that, I've got a terabyte hard drive. So yeah, I definitely want to find a way to like put everything in there, because I know in my comic strips, sometimes when I do Sundays, I have a title page where that just says the title, Heart of the City, but it has some kind of artwork, and I change the artwork, the art every Sunday, but only the newspapers that get the title page for the Sunday even get it. So it's really not being seen by a whole lot of people. So I'm hoping that there's a way, after a considerable amount of collections come out, maybe there can be like an omnibus that has all of the Sunday like title pages, because that would be nice for people to see.
Yeah. I was approached by Drawn and Quarterly, and to do a collection of my work. I was like, what, mine? No, they are doing a book. It's in the making, and it's coming out. So for me, that's great. Oh, look at the cat. And for me, that's great because, I have collections, Syndicate did a couple of books, collections, but Jordan Quarterly does these beautiful books. It would be hardcover. It'll be a way of holding on to what I did during this time, and in a lovely way, and right now I do have a couple of strips, well, more than a couple. They have a little box of my work in the Library of Congress, which is thrilling for me. It's like we went to see it. They have like 6 boxes of my dad's, and that's cool. But I went to see it, and you have to put on your gloves to see the work. So there is some stuff that is being preserved, and but the Drawn and Quarterly book, I'm so excited about, and it comes out at the end of the year.
That's so exciting. I know
Congratulations.
I know we both mentioned the Library of Congress already. I was actually speaking with an archivist at the Library of Congress, and she's been talking to a lot of digital art creators to find out, like, how do you guys save your work? Because I think that over in some time, we're going to see some better digital archiving of comics work. So I hope we're going to get there.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
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 That'd be really cool. I'm just geeking out about this book that I'm just
Yeah.
finding out about right now. Like, yeah. I was given Barbara's work when I was a little kumquat. I'm trying to think of what I was going through. I just remember my mom being like, you need this, like you should read this, because I was always drawn, and I was introduced through Barbara's work and the back of Essence magazine, so that was like how I got my Black news and this art. And I think honestly a lot of my stuff is like Floating Heads as well, and I'm pretty sure there was a major imprint on me looking at that. Cool. But it was fun to be able to like read these conversations as like an 8-year-old. That was like definitely like the grown folks talk that I wasn't supposed to hear. That's just me geeking out, but that's that's exciting. I'm really happy because Jordan Quarterly could use some more Black and brown faces on their publications. Let's be real.
I think it may have said the end of this year. I think it's the end of next year. But still, it's happening. It's gonna
feel like next week. It's already. I can't wait. But yeah, I've also been in talks with Library of Congress about that. I started off as a graphic designer, so I'm very sort of annoying about how I save everything digitally. But after I did this show at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and I got to see work that was older than mine, I got started in comics, drawing everything by hand. But because of time management and just the nature of our work-life ethic in 2021, I don't necessarily have the luxury or the time to draw everything by hand in the way that I would like to. So a lot of my work has shifted to being more digital. But after going to that show, it showed me the importance of having work that you can touch, being able to see it, there's something, it has a little bit more soul to it. And I know that just makes me sound old school. And I don't have anything against doing digital work because a lot of my work is digital, but there's just something about having that work that it's pushed me to stories that I at least have the time to draw it out, or have the time, even if it's just a short little thing. I try to draw it on the big piece of paper because I want to be able to look back at this 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and being able to see it, because we don't really know what the future is going to look like. It could look like Mad Max, it could look like Blade Runner, like it could go completely digital, it could go completely analog, and I want to be able to have the option of either in whatever future we're looking at. So but right now I have a box that has my work in it that my cats could get to if they really wanted to, that I think about it and I'm like, maybe I should move that box. But I live in the city. I don't have a very big space to put my work. But it's all, contained together, and I have my digital work, and, I hope to send my things to the Library of Congress. when I have my book out in 2023, and just some other things that I'm working on. If I find the more time, I would really like to just be able to draw more Six Chicks out on paper and not just on my tablet. Because I just feel like that's just important to have. It's just something that older me is gonna want, and so I have to do that for her. But yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to when I'm in the remember position and there's a panel that people are talking about my work and what people think about, what people interpret my work as, and people seeing the different eras of my work and things like that, and be like, ooh, Bianca was really going through something in 2020 to 2023. Like, I feel like a lot of us will see that in our work, but I'm curious to see what the collections are going to be like, what people are going to call my eras. This is Bianca's blue era, and this was Bianca's Cubist era. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is what I want for each of you. I mean, so yes. So we do have some questions coming in from our audience. The first one, and Bianca kind of already dropped one idea, but who would you fan cast as Jackie Ormes in a biopic?
Man, it's so hard. It's so hard to choose because I really only know her through photographs,
Right.
like I don't really, if I feel like if I had seen like a video of her talking, her mannerisms, how she carries herself, I would have a much easier way of figuring it out. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
I think the Tess idea was great. What's her last name? I can
Miss
just
Thompson? Yeah.
yeah, I can visualize her. It's a very similar look, and I think she's pretty daggone good. Yeah, I think that's who I would choose.
Okay, so this one is for Barbara, and just as Barbara keeps mentioning her father. Her father, for those who aren't aware, is Brumsick Brandon Jr., who published the comic strip Luther. Yes. And the question is there any chance that some of your father's work will be collected in the future and published?
It has to be. I mean, I'm really working on making sure his legacy stays alive. And I'm doing an exhibit with both of our works. We did it in New York. It's called Still 60 Years of Racism in America. And I was so proud of that exhibit. Tara Donahue curated it, and she really did an excellent job. And it was really moving. I'm breaking my arm, patting myself on the back, but it really was. And what happened was the pandemic, so everything got shut down, and the exhibit was up for a week, and that was that. But the Billy Ireland, Ohio State, they are going to do it. They're going to do it. I think that's the end of this year. The book is in the next year, but I'm trying to get straight because things are happening. When does that ever happen? So, we have this exhibit coming up, and it's my dad's work. And it's not just Luther. I mean, we're going to include Luther because the Billy Ireland already has some of his work, a lot of his stuff that they are storing in their room. I can't think of the word, but we're going to include some, but it's all of his stuff. My dad was prolific. I mean, he did many things for Freedom Ways and Black Resources, all kinds of things that in Florida Today. So we have a collection of how we set it up, talking about instead of doing it this decade, that decade, we didn't do it that way. We did it the subjects, the same things, police brutality, everything that you can think of. And from what he talked about, when he talked about it, and what I talked about, how I talked about it, it's politicians, all of it. So anyway, I'm hoping that is going to generate somebody saying, we got to put this into a book. And that would snowball into somebody else saying, we got to do a collection of Brunswick branded, because that is my goal. That is my wish. That is my, you know, my thing in life, to make sure his legacy stays alive. And there's just so much that that I have to keep trying to get people interested in. And the Library of Congress has, like I said, 6 boxes of his stuff. So he is appreciated, you know, so that's great. But I would love to see a collection of his work, or, you know, that's what I would love to see. Yeah.
So we're at an hour. We have 2 more audience questions. Is that all right if we get to them, everyone? All right, great.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. So our next question is, are there current creators working today that you see the same fire that you see in Jackie outside of yourselves?
So besides myself, I would probably say Jamila Rouser. Jamila is the publisher for Black Jose Press, and I believe like last night got a grant for $25,000 to continue her press, and all the stories and all of the media that comes from that press has been excellent. So I would probably say Jamila.
Well, I'm so impressed with these 2 people in the panel. I just can't even say it enough. I love them, and like they do have the fire, and they're doing it, and it's stuff that that it was for, you know, I never thought it could happen for me. I mean, like you were saying about, you know, seeing somebody being a cartoonist made you know that you could be a cartoonist. It wasn't until somebody said to me, "Can you create a comic strip?" And I had seen my dad, so I was like, yeah. So I'm like, I think I could do that. I mean, I was like, I can do that. But these 2 ladies here are incredible, and they have that kind of fire. I think that's why you wanted them on the panel. Yes.
Thanks, Barbara and Bianca.
Yeah, I feel like we've named some great people, but honestly, oh man, Jackie Ormes specifically. I mean, it's really hard to top the GOAT and what people are doing. I mean, I want to see, like, there's some artists out there that I do really love. But I like Shannon Wright is also doing some amazing work, but I also don't want to just name other Black women cartoonists. I'm really curious to see. I feel like there's some people out there that we don't know about yet. I feel like there's some people out there whose platform has they haven't had a chance to have the platform or the exposure that me and Steens have both been very fortunate to have. And you know, I really want I want to see who else is out there. I feel like there's still some more rocks that we can turn over and find. Because, you know, sort of like what Barbara's saying about her father's work and just making sure that it's preserved and making sure that we see it. That's what happens throughout history, is a lot of the work that is made by Black and brown people isn't preserved in the same way that we could just any old white dude's work. And throughout history, it just looks like only white men made work and the rest of us didn't. And that's never the case. That's not the truth. Oftentimes we are the ones who started it. And I feel like there's more people that need to be uplifted. And honestly, I'm a little disappointed. I feel like, you know, there was some people were shaking the table last year, and I've seen some Black backsliding, or just this year alone, of people kind of going back to the boys club, going back to only supporting and uplifting white voices. And I think that there's so many more people out there that deserve to be seen, and there's more artists like Barbara who deserve to get their flowers today. They're not in the in like how we're celebrating Jackie and she's no longer here with us. There are more artists that deserve to get their flowers while they're still here with us and still have careers in them to show. I'm excited to see what else Barbara can create, and I want us to not just look at younger people and pull people out of college and be like, okay, you're next. What's the next 45-year-old doing? The next 55, 65, 75, 85? What are the other artists are doing? It doesn't just have to be young people. That's what I love about comics. It's not just a young person's game. It's accessible to anyone. All you need is just an idea.
Yeah. I mean, anytime I think about longevity, I am reminded that when Jackie was in her twilight years, she would go to these doll conventions because she loves dolls. She did, the Patty Joe doll and everything, but she would keep going to those conventions if someone could give her a ride. And she was always surprised when people remembered her work. And I don't want any of us to be surprised when people remember our work. I want them to be like, yeah, good. I'm glad you read it. Everyone should be reading it. I don't want us to get to that point where we're like, oh, back in my heyday.
Yeah.
I want it to stay for long enough that new people, when they come into the industry, and when I say new, I don't mean young, I mean new people in the industry, when they come through, they're also celebrating everyone else too,
Yeah. Here's our last audience question is, would you all ever consider doing a modern take on your favorite Orm strip in your own styles?
Yes, anytime. Any time. All you have to do is knock on my door. Like, send me an email. Ask me once and I'll do it. Specifically what I want to do is I want to bring Torchy Togs back. And I just love drawing clothes so much. And like, I'm not a fashion designer. I just watch Project Runway every year. And I want to see more paper dolls. I want to see more. Like, do you remember in like 2002 when we would sit at our computers and just like put clothes on these dolls for hours and hours and hours? People still want that. So yeah, if I could do a Torchy Togs or a paper doll or something that has to do with fashion and comics, I will do it.
Barbara, Bianca?
Yeah,
I would love to do it. Yeah,
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I yes. I mean, I'll start right now. No problem. Like, let's go. Let's use the last couple minutes to just bang one out right now. But yeah, I would love to do, I want to draw that bad little girl. She's my inner child, and I need to let her out and just have some things to say. Can you imagine what she would say about the state of the world now? Oh, she has some things to say. She's got some things to say. Oh, it'd be so cute. Oh no, and I mean, maybe because I'm obsessed with my niece, who's about the same age too. And they always know. Little kids are always so observant and just go, they don't have that filter of being afraid of saying the truth. And I think we could use, we need her voice now. I would love to see some modern takes on those comics, and not just like on what is it? Not just on political things. Like, there could be a little issue where, she's like, good thing we bought these Jordans because we can't use our passports because, there's a pandemic, just stuff about the Black community of like passports versus Jordans, like there can be all types of things that she can add her commentary to. Yeah, I would love to see that. And I would love to draw it. Yes.
I'm in. I'm definitely in. I mean, if I were to do her things in my style, in the style that I've been doing, is it is that talking directly to the reader, but it is without environments, and it's just it's more about the words. And she was so great with her words. I mean, she just puts you right there in the moment of that she's discussing. You almost didn't even need to see it because the way she used words, and then you do see it, and it's these beautiful drawings. It's pretty incredible. I would love to give it a try. I would love to. Yeah.
Well, thank you to everyone who asked questions, and thank you to our lovely panel for taking this extra time to answer them. Before we wrap everything up, is there a way, or let's go around and share how to follow each of you, and so that we can get some news on these upcoming works, which each of you slightly mentioned, but like, let's get some promotion out there. So,
Yes,
Barbara?
so
Or
you-
sorry, Scenes.
oh, sorry, I keep answering the questions
That's
first.
all right.
Because I'm like,
That's good.
yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at oheysteens. That's OHEY Steens. You can also read Heart of the City in your local newspaper. If your newspaper doesn't carry it, ask them why. And
That's right.
let's see. There was some other thing. Oh, my Heart of the City is collected next year in May, so keep an eye out for that. And I was supposed to show this earlier, but I've got a Jackie Ormes tattoo.
Oh, look at that! Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, there you go.
Barbara, Bianca.
Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be brief. No, I only have what the new things that I'm doing now. I put on Instagram, so that's where you can see what I'm doing now. And I don't have a fancy name. It's just my name. It's Barbara Brandon Croft at Instagram. I guess that's what it's called. And you can see what I'm doing. I put up whatever event is going on. But I'm just really excited about the Drawing and Quarterly book, and I'm very excited about the Billie Ireland exhibit. So you'll be able to see when that's going to happen as it progresses on my Instagram.
Thanks, Barbara. And then Bianca.
Everything is at Bianca Eunice, all of the socials, and stay tuned for my debut graphic novel will be out in the spring of 2023 by Penguin Random House Teen. It's called Punk Rock Karaoke. I'm very excited to share the story about Black and brown punk kids from the South Side, just doing their thing and being rambunctious and having that same sort of Patty Joe and Ginger clapbacks. It's gonna be great, and so I can't wait for you all to read this part of my heart. And so just stay tuned to that. And that's all I'll be doing. That's why you don't see me, and that's why I don't reply to my texts, because I'm working on a book. I'm sorry if you're watching this and you're waiting for a reply. I am sorry.
Well, there's the blanket reply, everyone. Also, thank you for myself. That's in my, if you can see my name, it's at Hello Barcada, but Barcada. You can't hear the rolling R. And I do want to bring in, Regine, can you come and join us and let us know what's coming up for Wink?
Sorry, I had to harangue my cat really quickly. One of them wanted to pop on and wasn't happy that they couldn't. Anywho, hi everyone. Thank you so much for this wonderful panel. This was absolutely amazing. The audience has been great all night. Jamila Rouser was in the chat and said thank you, and so is Tara Nakashima Donahue, who's absolutely amazing, and she's one of our on our board. But yeah, Wink, what are we doing? We'll be doing some more panel discussions and art workshops right here on the YouTube channel and on the Wink Media channel. Our magazine, Wink Magazine, our third installment. Yeah, you just saw the cat's tail. Our third installment, the submissions end on Halloween. But we're having a rolling submission. So it's every season. We're doing this anthology series, and it's really awesome. We love it. Wink Magazine has been such a wonderful project to do during this pandemic time, and I'm looking forward to seeing it grow even further. We have a lot of other things happening next year that are in the works, and I can't wait to announce that. But again, I'm so grateful for every single one of you to be here on this panel. Everyone had such a great time again in the chat. It was super active. Again, thank you. We're very blessed to have you. Thank you so much.
This is great. I appreciate it.
And so one more, at least for me, I would personally like to thank everyone who tuned in tonight, and for everyone who shared the promotion for the panel and then came out tonight. So thank you so much. And thank you to Barbara, Bianca, Steens, and Regine, and to Women in Comics and Collective International.
Big shout out to Wycombe Big
Oh,
shout out to Wycombe.
Oh, yes.
They
Yeah.
set up a panelist. They're an amazing partner, and they're here to support
Yes.
our comic book community. So thanks to Wycombe.
I thank them.
Yes, so thank you to everyone. Just for myself, you all are part of a little bit of history as well again today, because this is the first live stream program that I've put on for Hello Barcada. So thank you. It's been so special, and I'm so happy that this was the first one. So so thank you everyone.
Thank
Was there
you.
anything else that we wanted to add, Regine, for Women in Comics Collective?
No, we're cool. We're good.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having us.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Light a candle for Jackie for Dia de
Yes.
los Muertos.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.